Before Jungkook's wedding, he made Taehyung a promise he believed with his whole heart. A quiet promise, spoken late at night when the world felt smaller and the future still belonged to them. "I won't let anything change between us. I promise you that, T." Jungkook's voice had been soft, almost trembling, under the dim light of the empty recording studio. The words lingered between them like something sacred, something that didn't need witnesses to be real. But now, 2 weeks before the wedding, Taehyung stood alone in that same room, and the promise felt like a ghost. The city outside was alive with noise, but inside the studio, everything felt suspended in silence. The only sound was the faint hum of the air conditioner and the quiet vibration of Taehyung's phone in his hand. He had called Jungkook 3 times. No answer, not even a message. Just yesterday, Jungkook had said they would still meet. Just one day, just them. The way he said it had made Taehyung believe again, the way he always did. Taehyung sat on the edge of the piano bench, staring down at the floor, watching shadows shift beneath his feet. Memories came in fragments. Late-night laughter, coffee cups left unfinished, fingers brushing when they thought no one was watching. Jungkook's smile, the kind that made everything feel possible. A key turned in the door. Taehyung looked up, his chest tightening, but it was Jungkook. It was one of the staff coordinators, holding a clipboard, her expression apologetic. "They canceled the rehearsal tonight," she said softly. "Something came up with the wedding." Taehyung nodded without speaking. After she left, the room felt even emptier. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a thin silver ring, one Jungkook had given him years ago during a tour overseas. Inside, engraved so small only he ever read it, were the words, "Always, no matter what." The irony tasted bitter. Across the city, Jungkook sat in a luxury hotel suite filled with people, stylists moving in and out, a tailor adjusting his suit, planners discussing flower arrangements and guest lists. His fiance sat nearby, scrolling through seating charts, her voice calm but nervous. Jungkook felt none of it. His phone buzzed again. Taehyung's name. He stared at the screen for a second too long, then turned it face down. His fiancée noticed. "Is everything okay?" she asked gently. "Just old things I need to let go of," Jungkook replied, forcing a smile he didn't feel. His hands were shaking when he put the phone away. That night, Taehyung walked past a massive billboard near the station. Jungkook's face filled the screen beside his bride-to-be, both of them smiling, glowing, perfect. Taehyung stopped walking. Something inside him cracked quietly. It wasn't jealousy, it wasn't even heartbreak. It was something colder. Something like being forgotten. He knew Jungkook hadn't meant to hurt him, but that didn't change the way it felt, being slowly erased without a goodbye. At home, Taehyung opened his notebook and wrote a note he never planned to send. If a promise is broken in silence, is it still a betrayal? He closed the book and placed it beside old lyrics they had written together, songs that never made it onto any album because they were too honest. Meanwhile, Jungkook sat at a dinner table surrounded by family and laughter, nodding at conversations he didn't hear, laughing a little too loudly at jokes that didn't reach him. Every few minutes, his eyes drifted to the door, as if expecting Taehyung to walk in. But Taehyung didn't come. Not that night, not the next day. And Jungkook didn't call. Not because he didn't care, but because deep down he was afraid. Not of Taehyung's anger, but of his silence. Taehyung stood inside the hotel elevator, holding a small envelope against his chest. Inside was a letter he had rewritten 5 times. Not a confession, not a goodbye. Just a quiet thank you. For everything they were. For everything they never got to be. The elevator doors closed, sealing off the sound of wedding preparations echoing down the corridor. The ride down felt endless. His reflection in the mirror looked tired, not sad, just tired. He stepped out onto the street, and a familiar voice called his name. Taehyung. He turned to see Namjoon jogging toward him, concern written across his face. I saw your name on the visitor list. Are you okay? Taehyung tried to smile. It didn't work. He's busy. Namjoon sighed and guided him to a nearby bench under soft street lights. Did you think he wouldn't be? It's his wedding, T. That's not what hurts, Taehyung said quietly. It's that he told me I mattered right before everything changed. Namjoon looked away for a moment. Maybe he still believes that. Maybe he's just scared of what it means now. Across the city, Jungkook stood in front of a mirror, adjusting his tie. But it wasn't the wedding he saw in his reflection. It was Taehyung's hand, brushing his during a late-night drive. The way silence between them used to feel full, not empty. His fiance entered the room holding cufflinks. Which one? Jungkook pointed to the silver pair without thinking. After she left, he whispered to his reflection, "You're not being honest." Later that night, Taehyung returned to the dance studio they once called their second home. He pressed play on an unreleased track and let the music fill the room. He moved slowly, not performing, not impressing. Just breathing. The door creaked. Taehyung froze. Jungkook stood there, breathless, as if he had run through the city just to find him. Why didn't you wait for me? Jungkook asked. Taehyung didn't turn around. I've been waiting every day. Silence stretched between them, thick and fragile. Jungkook took a slow step forward, the door closing softly behind him as if the world outside no longer existed. The studio felt smaller than it used to, heavy with everything they had never said. I wanted to come earlier, Jungkook said quietly. I just didn't know how to say the right thing. Taehyung finally turned to face him. His eyes were calm, but there was something tired in them that hurt more than anger ever could. Then say the wrong thing, Taehyung replied. Just don't lie. Jungkook swallowed. For a moment he looked like he might reach out, but his hand stopped halfway between them, unsure. I thought if I kept my distance, Jungkook said, maybe you wouldn't hurt, maybe I wouldn't either. But you promised me, Taehyung said, stepping closer, his voice trembling despite his control. You said nothing would change, and yet everything did. Jungkook's breath shook. I'm scared. Of what? Taehyung asked. Of what this means, of what people will think, of how complicated we've always been. Taehyung looked at him carefully, as if seeing him clearly for the first time in weeks. You should have been scared of losing me. The words landed between them like a quiet explosion. Jungkook lowered his hand. I never stopped caring. But you stopped showing up, Taehyung replied, and that's what broke the promise. Outside, the wind pushed against the windows, scattering dry leaves across the street like memories that refused to settle. Jungkook closed his eyes for a second. Tell me what to do, please. Tell me how to fix this. Taehyung didn't answer immediately. He turned toward the mirror lining the wall, watching his own reflection breathe. You can't fix something, he said softly, if you don't understand why it broke. Jungkook stepped closer, his voice barely above a whisper. I was overwhelmed. The wedding, my family, the pressure, and us. I didn't mean to cut you out. Then why did you? Taehyung snapped, the calm finally cracking. Why didn't you call? Why didn't you come to the studio, to the cafe, to any place you knew I'd be? I wasn't asking for a front row seat in your new life. I was asking for a place to stand. Jungkook's chest rose and fell. Because I was afraid I never stopped choosing you. Taehyung froze. The confession felt too honest, too simple to ignore. Then why didn't you? Taehyung asked, his voice breaking. Why didn't you choose me? Jungkook looked down at the floor. Because I didn't want to hurt anyone else. I didn't want to ruin everything I've built. I thought if I distanced myself, you'd move on, and I'd be able to convince myself that this didn't need a conclusion. Taehyung's eyes filled, but he didn't let the tears fall. You can't control who gets hurt, Jungkook, he said quietly. You can only decide who matters enough to be honest with. Silence settled again, thick and unresolved. Jungkook ran his fingers through his hair in frustration. Do you think I don't miss you every day? That I don't think about you when I'm supposed to be focused on guest lists and cake flavors? Taehyung took a step closer. Then why are you marrying someone else? The question echoed in the room. Jungkook swallowed, because she's safe. Taehyung exhaled sharply, so I'm the danger. You are, Jungkook admitted, meeting his eyes. You always were, but you're also the truth I keep running from. The door suddenly opened. Namjoon stood there, his expression serious. Sorry to interrupt, but Jungkook, you need to get back. The press is arriving. Jungkook hesitated. I need to finish this. If you don't go now, Namjoon said quietly, this story becomes something you can't control. Taehyung turned away. Go. That's not fair, Jungkook said, his voice rising. You think this is easy for me? No, Taehyung replied calmly. I think you made it harder by pretending nothing changed, by pretending I didn't matter. You matter, Jungkook said firmly. You always will. Then prove it, Taehyung said. Not with words, with action. Namjoon placed a hand on Jungkook's shoulder. They're waiting. Jungkook looked at Taehyung one last time. This isn't over. Taehyung didn't answer. When Jungkook left, the room felt hollow. Taehyung sat down slowly on the floor, his back against the mirror, staring at his own reflection. He wasn't angry anymore. He was tired. Tired of waiting for the right version of Jungkook, the one who wasn't torn, the one who wasn't afraid, the one who could finally choose him without hesitation. But maybe that version didn't exist. And if it didn't, what did that make all the promises they whispered under stage lights and city skis? The next morning, sunlight spilled gently through the curtains of Taehyung's apartment, but it brought no warmth. He sat at the small kitchen table with a cup of coffee growing cold between his hands, his phone lying face up beside it. No messages. No missed calls. Just silence. He scrolled through old photos without thinking, backstage moments, late-night studio selfies, blurry pictures taken in hotel rooms where the world felt distant and harmless. In every photo, Jungkook was there, smiling, laughing, leaning closer than he ever did with anyone else. Taehyung locked the screen. He wasn't angry enough to delete them. That was the problem. His phone buzzed. For a split second, his heart jumped. But it was Jungkook. It was Namjoon. Are you home? I'm downstairs. Minutes later, a knock echoed softly through the apartment. Taehyung opened the door to find Namjoon holding 2 iced coffees and a small paper bag of pastries, his expression calm but observant. You didn't answer my calls, Namjoon said as he stepped inside, so I brought caffeine. Taehyung smiled weakly. That's very on brand for you. They sat on the couch in silence for a moment, the air heavy with things neither of them wanted to say first. I saw Jungkook last night, Namjoon finally said. He looked like someone who realized he's in the wrong story. Taehyung let out a hollow laugh. He wrote the story. Maybe, Namjoon replied, but he's not the only one trapped in it. Taehyung stared at the coffee in his hands. It's not about blame anymore. It's about knowing when to stop expecting someone to come back. Namjoon hesitated. What if he changes his mind? What if he backs out of the wedding? Taehyung looked up, uncertainty flickering across his face. Then what? Then maybe, Namjoon said gently, he finally stops running from the truth. Across town, Jungkook sat at his fiance's family home, surrounded by polite conversation and soft music. Relatives discussed seating arrangements and song choices, laughing about memories he wasn't part of. Jungkook nodded and smiled when expected. But his mind was somewhere else. His phone lay on the table beside a blank notebook. He was supposed to be writing his vows. Every sentence he tried felt false. His fiance entered quietly and sat beside him. "You haven't written anything." Jungkook looked up, startled. "Not yet." She studied his face for a moment, then spoke carefully. "I don't want to pressure you, but I can tell your heart is somewhere else." Jungkook hesitated. "What if I told you I was confused, that there are things I haven't figured out?" She nodded calmly. "Then I'd say thank you for being honest." Her voice didn't shake. She didn't cry. "I've always known," she continued softly. "Maybe not everything, but enough to feel that part of you still belongs to someone else." Guilt washed over Jungkook's face. "I never wanted to hurt you." "But you did," she said gently, "and I think you're hurting yourself more." "I tried to do the right thing." "Sometimes the right thing isn't the easy thing," she replied. "And sometimes love means letting go of someone who isn't truly with you." That night Jungkook stood in front of Taehyung's door, unsure whether to knock. He didn't have a plan. He didn't have answers. He just knew he couldn't stay away anymore. The door opened before he touched it. Taehyung stood there in a hoodie, barefoot, eyes unreadable. They stared at each other in silence. "She knows," Jungkook said quietly. Taehyung stepped aside. "What did you tell her?" "The truth," Jungkook replied, "that I've been lying to myself." They sat on opposite ends of the couch, the room dimly lit by a single lamp. The distance between them felt heavier than any argument. "I don't know what I want," Jungkook admitted, "but I know what I'm missing when I'm not with you." Taehyung looked down. "That's not enough." "Then tell me what is," Jungkook said, his voice almost desperate. "Tell me what you need from me." Taehyung met his eyes. "I need someone who shows up, not someone who appears in fragments, not someone who only remembers me when everything else becomes too heavy." Jungkook swallowed. "I want to be that person. I just don't know how to undo what I've already done." Taehyung stood and walked to the window, staring out at the city lights. "You can't undo it," he said quietly, "but you can stop making it worse." Jungkook stepped closer. "Then let me start there. I'll call it off. The wedding, everything." Taehyung turned sharply. "Don't do that because of me. Do it because it's not the truth." Jungkook nodded slowly. "It's both." The air between them shifted. Not healed, not broken. Just honest. Jungkook took out his phone and typed a short message. Then he placed it face down on the table. Taehyung didn't ask what it said. For the first time in weeks, Jungkook wasn't running. And that alone felt like something new was beginning, even if neither of them knew where it would lead. The news broke early the next morning. A single post appeared on Jungkook's social media. No caption, no explanation, just a black screen and a small silver ring emoji followed by a broken heart. It disappeared within minutes. But it was already too late. Screenshots spread. Fans speculated. News accounts rushed to translate silence into headlines. Within an hour, Jungkook's name was trending worldwide, paired with words like canceled, scandal, and betrayal. Taehyung saw it first on Namjoon's phone, while they were sitting in the corner booth of their usual cafe. "He actually did it," Namjoon murmured. "He pulled out of the wedding." Taehyung didn't react. "It doesn't mean what you think it means," he said quietly. "Then what does it mean?" Namjoon asked. Taehyung stared at the condensation on his glass. "It means he finally chose honesty, but honesty doesn't automatically mean us." Inside, his emotions were tangled, relief mixed with guilt, fear wrapped around something that felt dangerously close to hope. Across town, Jungkook stood behind a podium surrounded by flashing cameras and overlapping voices. He looked calm. Too calm. "I know there are a lot of rumors," he said steadily. "So I'll say this once. The wedding has been canceled. It was a mutual decision. No one is at fault." Reporters shouted questions. He didn't answer them. We both deserve honesty, Jungkook continued, and we gave each other that. He bowed and walked away. Taehyung watched the live stream alone from his living room floor, knees pulled to his chest, the remote clenched tightly in his hand. It felt unreal. Watching someone you love into a future he almost built. Just as he turned off the TV, there was a knock at the door. He already knew who it was. Jungkook stood outside in a hoodie, hair messy, eyes exhausted but clear. "Can I come in?" he asked softly. Taehyung stepped aside. They didn't speak at first. They sat on opposite ends of the couch, the silence thick but no longer hostile. "I need to say some things," Jungkook finally said, "and I need you to listen, really listen." Taehyung nodded once. Jungkook exhaled. "I spent the last 2 years convincing myself that what we had was temporary, something intense, beautiful but unsustainable. I thought if I buried it deep enough, I'd forget how much it mattered." His voice cracked slightly. "But I never did. Every step toward that wedding was built on the lie that I could live without you. And the truth is, I can't. I don't want to." Taehyung's jaw tightened. "Then why did you wait until now? Why let it get this far?" "Because I was scared," Jungkook admitted. "Scared you shut the door in my face. Scared I'd ruin everything beyond repair." "You didn't ruin it," Taehyung said quietly, "but you broke something." Jungkook nodded, guilt filling his eyes. "I know, and I'm not asking you to forget that. I just want to start again, not from the beginning, from here." Taehyung studied his face for a long moment, like he was memorizing it. "I don't need you to prove anything right now," he said slowly. "But I need consistency. No more disappearing, no more unfinished promises." "I can do that," Jungkook replied. "Not because I owe it to you, because I owe it to myself." They sat there in the soft afternoon light, not rushing to define anything. It wasn't a reunion. It wasn't forgiveness. It was a fragile truce between two people who had loved each other through too much silence. But peace didn't last long. That evening, Jungkook's phone rang. He answered and went quiet almost immediately. When he hung up, Taehyung knew before he said anything. "She's holding a press conference," Jungkook said. "She wants to clear her name. She might mention you." Taehyung exhaled slowly. "So it begins." Jungkook reached for his hand. "Are you ready for this?" Taehyung didn't pull away. "I wasn't ready before, but I'm tired of hiding." The next day, the broadcast aired. Jungkook's former fiance sat calmly before a white backdrop, her voice composed, her expression steady. "I'm not here to place blame," she said. "I'm here to offer clarity. Our hearts were in different places, and sometimes the bravest thing you can do is let someone go when you realize they were never truly yours." Taehyung felt something twist in his chest. Not guilt. Respect. "She didn't have to protect us," Taehyung murmured after the screen went dark. "She's always been kind," Jungkook replied softly, "and I didn't deserve that kindness." Taehyung turned to him. "You should thank her." "I will," Jungkook said, "but first I need to talk to you about us." Taehyung crossed his arms. "About what?" "About not rushing," Jungkook said carefully. "About not turning this into something we use to escape the mess. I want this to be real, not a reaction." Taehyung blinked. "You're saying you don't want to be with me right now?" "I'm saying I want to be with you forever," Jungkook replied. "But not if it means dragging unfinished wounds into something new." Taehyung felt his defenses soften. "So what does that look like?" "Slowing down," Jungkook said. "Talking, relearning each other, protecting what we rebuild." Taehyung nodded. "No sudden declarations, no public labels, just us." Jungkook smiled faintly, quietly. For the first time in weeks, the word didn't feel lonely. It felt safe. The weeks that followed felt strangely peaceful, almost unreal. No headlines, no secret meetings, no dramatic confessions whispered in dark rooms, just simple moments that reminded them how natural everything still felt when they stopped trying to define it. They started meeting in ordinary places again. Late-night diners where no one cared who they were. Quiet parks at dawn where the city hadn't fully woken up yet. Long drives with no destination, just music playing softly and conversations drifting between memories and dreams. Taehyung noticed the change first. Jungkook didn't disappear anymore. He didn't cancel plans last minute. He didn't avoid difficult conversations. When something felt wrong, he spoke. When he felt unsure, he admitted it. It wasn't perfect, but it was real. One night they sat on the rooftop of Jungkook's apartment, wrapped in hoodies, watching the lights of the city flicker below. "Do you ever think about how close we were to losing each other completely?" Taehyung asked quietly. Jungkook nodded. "Every day." Taehyung leaned back against the railing. "I used to think love was about intensity, about how much it hurts, about how dramatic it feels." "And now?" Jungkook asked. "Now I think love is about consistency," Taehyung replied. "About choosing the same person even when nothing exciting is happening." Jungkook smiled. "That sounds terrifying." Taehyung laughed softly. "It is, but in a good way." There was a pause. "Do you regret it?" Taehyung asked. "The wedding, the chaos, all of it." Jungkook thought for a moment. "I regret the pain. I regret not being honest sooner, but I don't regret choosing the truth." Taehyung turned to him. "Even if the truth doesn't guarantee a happy ending." "Especially then," Jungkook said, "because at least it's ours." Silence settled between them again, but it felt different now, comfortable, unforced. Taehyung reached for Jungkook's hand, intertwining their fingers slowly, like he was testing whether the connection still worked. It did. Jungkook squeezed his hand gently. "I don't know what the future looks like." "Me neither," Taehyung said. "But for the first time, I'm not afraid of not knowing." Jungkook exhaled. "I used to think certainty was everything. Now I think trust is." Taehyung nodded. "And trust takes time." They didn't kiss. They didn't make any promises. They just sat there, hands together, watching the night unfold. The next morning, Taehyung woke up to a message from Namjoon. "You look different lately, lighter." Taehyung smiled at the screen. He replied, "Maybe I stopped carrying someone else's fear." Across the city, Jungkook stood in his kitchen staring at two coffee mugs on the counter. He poured coffee into both without thinking, then paused. He smiled. Some habits were hard to break. And maybe he didn't want to break them anymore. That afternoon, they visited the old studio where they used to write together. Dust covered the piano. The walls still held echoes of unfinished melodies. Taehyung ran his fingers across the keys. "We wrote our best songs here." "And our worst fights," Jungkook added. Taehyung laughed. "True." Jungkook sat beside him. "Do you want to write again?" Taehyung looked at him. "About what?" "About us," Jungkook said. "Not the dramatic version, the quiet one." Taehyung pressed a key gently, letting the note hang in the air. "Maybe that's the hardest story to tell." Jungkook smiled. "Then it's probably the most honest one." They didn't finish a song that day. But they started one. And that felt like enough. Later that night, Taehyung stood on his balcony alone, looking out at the city. For the first time in a long time, he wasn't waiting for Jungkook to call. He knew he would. And that changed everything. Love no longer felt like something fragile he had to protect from breaking. It felt like something steady he could finally trust to stay. The quiet didn't last forever. It never does. One afternoon, while they were sitting in Taehyung's living room watching a movie neither of them was actually paying attention to, Jungkook's phone buzzed again. This time, it wasn't the press. It wasn't fans. It was his manager. Jungkook stared at the screen longer than necessary before answering. "Yeah," he said. I know I saw the schedule, I need time. He ended the call and leaned back against the couch, rubbing his face. What is it? Taehyung asked. Jungkook exhaled slowly. They want me to go public again. Not about us, about everything. New image, new narrative. They think the silence is hurting my brand. Taehyung smiled faintly. So now you're a product again. Jungkook didn't laugh. I thought I was done with that feeling, but it's coming back. Taehyung studied him. What do you want? Jungkook hesitated. I want to live, not perform living. Taehyung nodded. Then don't let them write your story for you again. Jungkook looked at him. It's not that simple. It never is, Taehyung replied. But you already know what happens when you choose safety over truth. Jungkook swallowed. I don't want to lose myself again. Taehyung reached for his hand. Then don't disappear this time, even if things get messy. Jungkook squeezed his fingers. Stay with me. Taehyung met his eyes. I am, but not as your secret, not as your escape, as myself. That night, Jungkook wrote something he had avoided for years. Not a statement. Not a song. A letter to himself. He wrote about fear, about control, about how love terrified him more than failure ever did, about how he had spent his life being chosen by the world but never fully choosing for himself. When he finished, he felt lighter. Not because everything was solved, but because nothing was hidden. The next week, Jungkook declined 3 major offers. No explanations, no justifications, just a simple no. His manager was furious. The industry was confused. Jungkook felt free. Taehyung watched it all from a distance, trying not to interfere, trying not to become the reason behind any of Jungkook's decisions. One evening, he finally said it. I don't want you to build your life around me. Jungkook looked surprised. I'm not. I know, Taehyung said, but I don't want to become your excuse or your rebellion. I want to be your choice. Jungkook smiled softly. You already are. Taehyung shook his head. No, I mean every day, even when I'm boring, even when I'm difficult, even when the world is louder than us. Jungkook stepped closer. Then choose me back, even when I'm scared, even when I don't know what I'm doing. Taehyung nodded. That's the deal. For the first time, they didn't seal it with a kiss. They sealed it with eye contact. With stillness. With 2 people standing in the middle of uncertainty and refusing to run. Months passed. Not everything was easy. There were arguments about schedules, about boundaries, about how much of themselves they were willing to share with the world. Sometimes Jungkook slipped into old habits, silence, avoidance, overthinking. And sometimes Taehyung felt the familiar fear return, the fear of waiting, the fear of being secondary. But this time they talked. They fought without disappearing. They disagreed without cutting each other off. They learned that love wasn't about never breaking. It was about repairing without resentment. One night long after midnight, Jungkook lay awake beside Taehyung, watching him sleep. He realized something quietly. For the first time in his life, he wasn't afraid of the future. Not because it looked perfect, but because he wasn't facing it alone. Taehyung shifted slightly, eyes half opening. Why are you staring at me? He murmured. Jungkook smiled. I'm just making sure you're real. Taehyung reached for him, pulling him closer. Don't worry, I'm not going anywhere. Jungkook closed his eyes. And this time he believed it. Not as a promise, not as a fantasy, but as a choice they kept making. Every single day. Before continuing any further, it is important to pause for a moment and speak honestly, calmly, and clearly to you as a reader. Everything you have read so far, and everything that will follow after this point, is a work of fiction. It is a narrative created purely from imagination, intended for storytelling, emotional exploration, and creative expression. It is not a report of real events, not a retelling of actual history, not a hidden truth, and not a reflection of anyone's real life. This story does not claim to describe reality, and it should never be interpreted as such. All names, personalities, relationships, conflicts, dialogues, emotions, and situations within this narrative exist only inside the world of the story itself. Even if some characters appear familiar, even if certain moments feel realistic or emotionally convincing, they are not meant to represent real individuals. Any resemblance to real people, public figures, or real-life events is entirely coincidental and unintentional. The characters are fictional constructions, shaped by narrative needs, not by real biographies, real actions, or real intentions. This story is not news. It is not information. It is not a document, testimony, or evidence of anything outside the text itself. It does not describe what truly happened, what is happening, or what will happen. It exists only as a piece of creative writing, designed to explore emotions, relationships, and inner conflicts in a symbolic and imaginative way. The feelings portrayed here are narrative tools, not personal statements, and the situations described are literary devices, not reflections of real circumstances. Stories like this can feel powerful because they mirror human experiences that many people recognize: fear, longing, regret, hope, attachment, distance, and the desire to be understood. That familiarity can create emotional resonance, and that resonance can make fiction feel real. But emotional realism does not equal factual reality. This narrative is an artistic space, not a window into anyone's private life, and it should be treated with the same critical awareness as any other fictional drama. It is also important to approach this text with ethical responsibility. This story should not be shared, quoted, or presented as if it were factual information. It should not be used as a basis for rumors, speculation, assumptions, or attacks on real people. It should not be turned into proof, evidence, or insider knowledge. It exists only as a creative narrative and must remain in that space. Reading fiction is an act of imagination, not investigation, and the boundary between the two deserves to be respected. In an online world where sensational narratives spread quickly and emotional stories are often mistaken for truth, being critical and thoughtful as a reader becomes especially important. Fiction can be meaningful without being real. It can be moving without being accurate. It can feel intimate without being personal. This story invites reflection, not belief, and emotional engagement, not literal interpretation. Some elements in this narrative may be loosely inspired by public imagery or familiar archetypes, but inspiration does not mean representation. The story does not claim to depict the real character, values, choices, or inner lives of any actual person. It does not aim to harm, mislead, or redefine anyone. Its purpose is purely artistic, to explore imagined emotions within an imagined world, for readers who choose to step into that space knowingly. So as you continue reading, the healthiest way to engage with this narrative is to treat it as a novel, not as a revelation. Let it be experienced as fiction, processed as fiction, and shared as fiction. Allow it to exist as a story, not as a statement about reality. In that understanding, the narrative can be enjoyed safely, responsibly, and honestly. With that clarity established, the story now continues forward, not as a reflection of the real world, but as an imagined journey that exists only within the boundaries of this fictional universe.